right, gonna do one more recording this Sunday. Um, I want to say afternoon, but it's not quite afternoon yet. We did early service at church this morning. This recording, though, I want to be about finances. The prior one was about trials and overcoming and what God does through all that, and just the faith we have in this time of craziness in the world and tribulations abounding. And it's just the beginning, Jesus said. More to come. But we pray through those things. We pray for others. We use our trials to serve and have a burden for others and actually care about people and their needs. And we don't usually care until we go through a need, unfortunately, but the Lord uses that, whatever it takes for him to get our attention as Christians, to actually care about people and pray for them, because he puts that love in your heart when you let God in your life. So now use it. All right, let's talk about money. So something hit me and Sarah, my wife, and I really want to share this. We're trying to pay our house off. It's our only debt, and we owe about $13,800 and something right now, which is amazing. We've paid down aggressively. I sold my old house, which was about $30,000 right there. I put most of it on this mortgage, and we put an extra $1,000 a month on the principal out of my paychecks each month by living on less, not having to spend as much. Got to pay the bills, of course, pay off the credit card in full, pay no interest or fees on the credit card. We use it to pay our bills and a little bit of shopping. Credit cards, you overspend with plastic. So I've been cutting back lately and going to more cash for just my everyday spending. It just keeps me in control a little better, and use the credit card for just bills. It still builds the credit score and it keeps a good credit history, but without overdoing it. So I've been telling myself, okay, if I go to Walmart or wherever, it's going to be cash only. I've just been trying that, and I've really cut my spending. And for the first time last month, I had some money left over. Wow, that was amazing. Because I put so much on the mortgage, and then I paid the bills, and there's been nothing left over, but I had some spending in there that made the difference. So cutting back. But we have a goal, and I wanted to talk about the value of goals real quick. Next March the 1st, 2020, will be the exact 3-year or 36-month mark in our mortgage. Now, in the timeline, it's a 30-year mortgage. So what we've been doing by putting an extra $1,000 on principal each month is obviously paying that principal that we owe down very aggressively. And I haven't done the calculation in a minute, but basically we're trying to turn a 30-year mortgage into what would be a 3-year mortgage if we can meet our goal of paying off March the 1st. Again, I sold my old house to help with that. Our original loan amount was $54,800, and I sold my old house for $30,000. Our interest rate is 4.25%, and again, that's over a 30-year payoff period. So our monthly payment of principal interest was $269.58, I believe, and then with taxes and insurance, it is $480 total a month. $480, not counting anything extra I put on principal. When we put the extra from the sale of the old house, it took first of all, our $269 a month principal and interest, most of that was interest. About $200 a month, about $190, was going to interest. Very little on principal at the beginning of the loan when we started our payments. And interest is just money that is money to the bank, free money out of my pocket. It's not going to pay down my debt at all, right? Because the more you owe, whatever your interest percentage is, it means a higher amount of your payment each month is just going to interest and not to principal. So the more I could put on principal, the less is going to interest, which is saving money, and more of my house payment each month is going to principal. What that means is you're paying off much faster and much less to interest. And you can save $19,000, $20,000 just on a loan of my size by putting an extra $100 a month. That's all, just $100 a month, not to mention $1,000. I was going to save $19,000 in interest just by putting an extra $100 a month on principal. When I figured that out, I said, well, why don't I do $1,000 a month if I can? And there's some months where I can't. We have some trials and extra expenses we didn't expect. We had a car engine blow. We had an HVAC system go out. We had all kinds of medical issues with an ambulance and surgery and you name it with my wife. And so we had 3 major incidents within 6 months of this year, 2019. And each one of those was a good $5,000 minimum. Would have been a lot more if we hadn't had insurance. So point is, we had to cover that out of pocket if we wanted to cover it at all. And I wasn't going to put on a credit card and pay 20% interest on it, or however much. My interest rate, I think, is around 16 to 17% on my credit card. We're not going to do that. I'm not going to pay any interest on a credit card. So It feels like some months you can't meet your goals, but but we went back to our goal. Hey, even if I couldn't do 1,000 this month extra on principal, we're still going to go back to doing 1,000 a month because most stuff we paid out of savings. So for the last, I don't know, we're going on, I want to say 15 to 20 months of putting an extra 1,000 on principal, and then using the sale of my old home to put extra on principal as well. One month I did 10,000, 5,000, and another 5,000. My mortgage company, when I log in online, I can only do up to 5,000 at a time, but you can do as many payments as you want during the month. So that's what I did. I had money just sitting in savings, wasn't making any interest. If I put it on the house, at least I could save on interest there. And remember, your interest rate is every year, so you're actually paying multiple years of interest if the longer you're paying on that loan. So we want to make it shorter, not longer. Anyway, so here's what we came to. If we could, first of all, set a goal, right? We want to pay off our debts by a certain time. We know how much our payments are minimum. So now we want to calculate what would it take to pay off our house within a certain goal. I made a financial spreadsheet from the college students where I work. That's my job, to do financial literacy at our community college here locally. So I made a spreadsheet and I had to research, and it took me a few weeks to do everything. And I'm still perfecting in areas. I'm always trying to improve it. But on this Excel spreadsheet, it went from bare nothing to a payoff calculator. And so you could put your debt, which again, remember the three elements of debt: how much you're borrowing, at what interest rate, over how much time, right? Those are the three things you have to calculate a debt payoff and how much you're going to pay each month. And then if I do extra, which is where you need the Financial Calculators app, then you can figure out how much you're going to save in interest and all that. On my calculator on the spreadsheet for my college students, you put in how many months you want to pay off your debt, right? So hopefully shorter, obviously, than the minimum. Even a credit card, though, because the credit card's revolving, it can go on forever. So what you want to do is say, I want to be debt-free within 12 months. So you put 12 in there. And then how much I owe and at what interest rate, and it will automatically calculate how much you would need to pay each month to reach that goal. So Sarah and I set the goal of next March. Well, that's 8 payments from now. All right, exactly. And in my account online with my mortgage company, they have a calculator I found, and I was just playing on my phone at night, looking at my numbers and how much do I owe right now on the mortgage, etc. And I found this calculator in there. Maybe I've seen it before. I didn't realize. Didn't remember, but there it was, and it said, okay, you put in when you want to be done with this debt, and it'll just like I've done for my college students. I could do that for my own mortgage and find out at what point would I be debt free. So I said I want to be debt free by March the 1st, and it said, okay, here's how much you need to pay each month to achieve that goal. Well, it turns out it's 500 more a month. If we could do 500 more a month and I don't have to deplete my savings, which I wouldn't do anyway because it's too dangerous, you need an emergency fund. But by cutting spending a little bit more and putting another chunk on the principal, we could pay off by March 1st and retain our savings. That is amazing. We know that's not going to happen every month, so I plan for that. But it has really made us want to be aggressive about cutting our spending to reach our goal. And so goals do so many wonderful things. They make you plan out your dollar for dollar vision, and and it affects your habits, what you're going to do each month about your money. A goal gives you a reason to control your money each month. But you got to have a reason for the goal, right? An incentive. What's the incentive? Well, I'm paying off early. Maybe it's that magic number of I want to turn a 30-year mortgage into a 3-year. Or if you're trying to set a goal for saving, I want to hit $1,000, triple digits, or $20,000, whatever your goal is. And it may seem way too far away right now. So set small goals, work your way up, but hit triple digits. Well, now if I only had 1,500, well, now if I had 2,000 in savings, and you start to, and so you be consistent every month. And if you get any bonuses, you can cut some spending. Maybe I can put a little more on it this month and reach my goal faster, right? And so, you need an incentive for your goals. Would get you excited about them. And then you set the goal. I'm going to be at a certain point at a certain time. And that affects your daily behavior to do what you need to be doing all along anyway, but you just didn't really have the motivation. Now you have a reason to budget, as people might call it, to reach that goal. For us, it's debt payoff. We want to be out of a mortgage. I can't wait to start an investment fund, and I don't mean in the markets. I mean for me, it'll probably just be good old safe savings in preparation for a mortgage that is not on my home or personal belongings, per se. It would be an investment property, hopefully a rental, that generates income monthly, that pays for itself, it pays for its own mortgage, and puts money back in my account that would be for long-term ministry goals and trips, things that Sarah and I may want to do in the future. So where our income is very limited, we don't make that much. A supplemental income could help us extend ourselves to some extra ministry goals and dreams that we might not be able to do otherwise. So that's a long-term plan for me, but I'm doing it in baby steps, starting with, well, it's not really a baby step, it's paying off the house. That's a big step, but one step at a time in my world. I'm a simple guy, and I'm kind of adverse to a lot of risk, so I don't want multiple debts at the same time. And I know a lot of Americans have multiple debts with their house and their car and their student loans. And if they have a credit card or medical, oh my goodness. And you say, well, I don't have a mortgage, I have rent. Well, their rent payment is probably higher than a mortgage payment. And they're going to get evicted real fast if they can't make the rent payment if the income changes. And I dread the next recession nationally because if millions of Americans default at the same time on their debts, I think the system's at risk of collapsing again like 2008. I don't care that they say, well, the credit is better these days because people have been, in 2008, anybody could get a mortgage, whether they could afford it or not. Nowadays, they have to check your income. I don't care. Just because they checked your income when you took out this huge mortgage on some overpriced house doesn't mean that your income will still remain the same in a recession. And so all these people that we think have good mortgages, no debt is a good debt if you can't pay it. If all of a sudden you can't make the payments, and if that happens in mass to millions of people in this country and they default, whether it's housing or whether it's or just rent, even if it's not a debt, or they can't make their medical payments, or they can't make their, you can see hospitals going up on end. We saw this in Chattanooga a few years ago. Our local hospital was doing millions of dollars in charity work, but then they were in the red on their budget, at risk of collapse. Credit cards are underpinned usually by banks and other types of lenders. They could go belly up. And if your bank doesn't function, the system's pretty much over, because most paychecks are now direct deposit through the bank. Your ATM comes through your bank. Most of your bills are auto paid, or you're paying off a credit or debit card. That's coming, all this transactions happening through your bank. That's why the Federal Reserve, which is the central bank of the U.S., bends over backwards to make sure banks stay strong fundamentally. That's why they do stress tests every year after the 2008 crash and all that. And that's why they even, some say, print money or digitally create money to try to take up the slack and use some modern monetary theory, MMT, to keep these banks solvent. Because if they fail, everything in the financial system fails, and it becomes a domino effect with the rest of the world, because banks are tied together. So it's something else. Not to mention investments and the whole stock market mess and the whole real estate market, and on and on. So 2008 taught us a lot about how domino effects can collapse from one industry to another. The banking industry versus the housing industry. What about the whole car industry? Remember when Obama gave them a bailout? And investment companies, remember AIG was about to fail. Goldman Sachs got bailed out. Lehman Brothers completely collapsed, bankrupt. Some others got bought out. So 2008 is really not that far away, and we've not had a recession since. We're now in the longest expanse in American history, 10 to 11 years of an economy expanding without having another recession. It's historic right now. And who knows if that can continue indefinitely. The Fed has just announced, and I have an article right over here, I'll pull my headphones off, where June the 4th, the Fed said, we're going to do all we can to keep this expanse going. If we have to keep interest rates super low, historically low, if we have to do other things that used to be considered not normal monetary behavior, well, now you might as well just consider it as possibly normal. Very interesting what they were saying about keeping the expanse going, keeping unemployment low, keeping jobs stable, or keeping prices stable, keeping the economy going, keeping the banks strong, etc. So my thing is, you and I can't control all the big stuff, but you and I can manipulate our economy, our personal finance, our household budget. That's what I want to encourage everyone to do. It's what I talk to college students about. We don't get into the big economic picture because, and there's multiple sides to that, and we can't change it anyway. But we are an economy. We are a player to the larger economy. What we do with our student loans, if you have any, I hope you don't. But your car debt, again, I hope you don't have car debt either. It's a huge drain on the budget, and it's a depreciating asset. At least owning a home is building equity if home values remain. Again, they crashed in '08 and they can crash again, but they may grow. Historically, they do. Real estate's one of those tangible assets that you're always going to need real estate. So even if houses became rentals, it's still real estate. It's still valuable. So there's a move today in minimalism to kind of say, well, it's just about making memories and experiences. It's no longer about owning stuff. Materialism's bad, and you should downsize. But don't forget, material things have a form of intrinsic value because they're something tangible that can have a dollar amount attached to it. So I believe in making memories, but I don't believe in blowing all my money on trips. First of all, provide for my family. We need the vehicles paid off. We need the house hopefully paid off soon. And we need those tangible assets in place to survive. Then we'll talk about making a bunch of memories and experiences. Don't get me wrong. You still have to make experiences and memories now, but on a budget, right? I'm not going to shift all my finances away from building equity and assets just because I want to be non-materialistic. Well, are you going to be non-materialistic on your food? No, you're still going to need to eat. You're still going to need to drive. You're still going to need a dry place to live. You're still going to need some things in your life that involve stuff. So I believe getting your assets established, your material things established first, then you can travel the world. That's just my view. I don't care what society says. I don't care what the group psychology of society is right now, telling us in these TV shows on Netflix, wherever, telling us how to control our stuff. There's value in it, but there's also some value in stuff. So get it paid off, get out of debt, have some income established. If you're preparing for recession, they say multiple streams of income is best. We're in a situation where I'm going to lose my wife's income as she's pregnant, and assuming we have our baby in December, and she's not going to be working probably again unless she does side income stuff. And that's up to her. So it's going to fall on my income to pay the bills. She's been helping out a little bit leading up to this point. I don't ask her really for anything because, I want to be a provider while I can. But she's been gracious. But, our budget's about to change big time. And then we're adding a baby to the mix. So being smart with our money and doing a budget is so important. And so I have this financial spreadsheet that I created for college students, like I say. But I use it myself. I created it for myself, to be honest about it, too. Because I needed this. And if I needed it, others may need it. And so it's become a beautiful tool. I've had multiple people, coworkers, ask me for this spreadsheet, not just students. And I send it to all the students anyway. But it has just been powerful. And family members that have said, hey, let's do this spreadsheet together. And it's just a beautiful thing. So, and I have to redo it myself. So I was doing it every month, and then I realized, well, once we kind of know what the monthly is, unless we'll do another one when there's a big change. When I get rid of my mortgage payment, it's time to do another budget because there's a whole freedom of income. Having a baby, I have to add another layer of expense, perhaps. Losing my wife's income, it's not on there anyway, but if it was, we'd have to remove it and adjust accordingly on our allowance for spending, for example. We don't actually have a spending allowance in the sense that we don't set an exact dollar. We just kind of know the guidelines of let's not overspend too much. Because we don't let our credit cards go crazy, we've not had hardly any problems. I could cut it a little closer to the dollar each month, but I kind of, since I did a budget every month for a while, I've got a sense of what to do. I feel it. When I'm out shopping, I kind of feel, okay, that's too much. Let's cut this back so I don't go over budget. I just kind of already know. So, and then the unexpected stuff happens. So, don't overspend. But anyway, knowing your numbers is powerful, so you can know how much to spend if you need to know that. If know how much you can put extra on debt to get out of debt early, or how much to put in some sort of investment. I built an investment calculator into the spreadsheet that would tell you what your future value is based on the numbers at the time. Does not mean it's guaranteed. It's not. Never is an investment guaranteed. That's why I don't put investing first. I put debt payoff and savings first. Provide for my family first. An investment is a long-term goal with risk. So I have to treat it as such. So I do the things that have less risk first because I have a limited income. I can't afford to risk too much money. That's why, I've been to a bunch of those real estate meetings where they try to talk you into paying thousands to get some software so you can flip houses. I've been to a bunch of those meetings. I love real estate. But you know what? No. Because guess how you buy those houses? With a ton of debt from secret lenders. And I know they're secret because I asked. What if one doesn't sell? What if you don't make a profit? You still got to pay the lender off. And so what would they tell you to do? Oh, go buy another one, take out another debt, sell that one for a profit to pay off both debts. Within 3 deals, you're going to be bankrupt if you don't have success. And so some will give you the carrot of, well, your first deal will be successful. We guarantee it, right? Because they'll basically bail you out on the first one. But by then, they've got you roped into another contract, I'll guarantee you. So, no thank you. I'll do my own research, and I will save money in a way that I don't have to borrow so much. And if I do borrow, I want it to be conventional. Why? Because the lower interest rate. Another thing they didn't tell you is what's the interest rate on those private secret loans, that dark shadow lending that you're getting to do these fancy real estate deals or whatever investing you're doing. What's the interest rate? 10%, 12%? What if I can go to the bank and get 5%? Saves me half or more. So, I'm not playing their game right now. Just saying. I believe in building my foundation. When I'm on a limited income and I have a family, my job is to provide first, right? And my wife and however we want to contribute as we agree as a couple. And so we want to build our foundation. And my wife has been beautiful. She agrees financially. She hasn't fought me on it. She's helped guide me in areas. She's the one that sat down after our marriage and said, let's do a budget. You would think I'd be the one because I was big on budget. Because when I was single, it changed my life. And then I was preaching it to college students. But then Sarah comes along and says, hey, let's do a marriage budget. I was like, yeah, right. Let's do a marriage budget. Absolutely. And she'd start on the back of an envelope. Well, our bills, our electric payment each month is about this, and our water is about that. And she just went down the list. And I said, hey, basically, we ended up plugging it into the spreadsheet. And anyway, it was really cool. So, and we'll probably do another one today. So it's exciting. It's fun. It's empowering to know your numbers and then strategically place them toward your goals, right? I want to be out of debt. I want to have the assets we need. So let's save to buy some things. If we need furniture set or we need a car, let's start a furniture or car fund in our savings account. And we know that's what it is. I don't have multiple savings accounts. I have one, and just in my mind, I divide it up or on a spreadsheet or whatever, piece of paper. I know what the money is for. 1,000 of my savings is for a new car. 100 of that is for a new cell phone, which I don't even buy. I buy $50 cell phones, cheap as you can get. I don't mess around with expensive stuff. It's too much turnover with cell phones. And they're going to update it anyway and make yours out of date. No. And I'm not going to pay $100-something a month, and I used to do this on a cell phone plan, to pay 2-3 times for the real cost of that cell phone. Yeah. And I don't need an expensive cell phone. I don't do that much with it. I don't even like cell phones. I wish I didn't carry one. It's more stress in my life. And there's research on that, by the way. Regardless of the whole cancer thing, it's just stressful. So, California suggests there's cancer connected to cell phones. I don't know if that's true or not. They always say it was too early to tell, right? So by the time we all have cancer, I guess, then they'll say, oh yeah, I guess cell phones cause cancer and microwaves. But I don't know if they do. It's not the point. I don't want that much stress in my life. I don't want to be bound to social networking and bound to who's going to call and text me today. I want to be a blessing to others. I want to be able to live my life in freedom. I want to be financially secure and as best I can, as the Lord's given me that stewardship. Amen? So, get some goals. That was the point of this recording. Whether it's a debt payoff or it's a savings account, an emergency fund, potentially an investment fund, maybe it's a travel fund. I absolutely love real estate. I was asking the Lord, or I was thinking, dreaming, Lord, I sure wish I could be the real estate in the millennium. Jesus says there's going to be 1,000 years where he has a kingdom on earth. And the Bible says they're going to have houses and vineyards. I found it. And it blew my mind. I think it was in Isaiah. And I was like, oh my goodness, Dad. Because he's been a prophecy buff too. I was like, Dad, the Bible says we're going to have houses and vineyards in Christ's time in the future, when the world is made all peaceful again. I was like, and so I've been thinking, ooh, couldn't I be a real estate agent at that time? I mean, maybe God just plans it all out. Jesus said, in my house, in the Father's house, in my Father's house are many mansions. Real estate is in the Bible, and it will be in heaven. I don't know what it means. I'm just saying. I'm passionate. I love housing, but I want to do it with a purpose. You can be covetous over your housing because you're selfish about it and possessive, and that's not what God called us to do. That's against the Ten Commandments. The 10th Commandment is not to be covetous. But if you can use it for the kingdom of God, to be a blessing to your family, to be a testimony to others, hey, you can do this. You don't have to rent the rest of your life. If you want to, good for you. But if you want to build net worth and you want to have an asset and you don't want to have to make a monthly payment someday once you've paid off, and if you can pay off that debt faster and save a ton of money in interest in the process, there are multiple reasons to, take a look at real estate. The market's way too hot right now, I think, for a lot of buyers. And it's better to rent in that case. You don't want to lose thousands on a home that's overpriced right now. It's going to lose its value later if the market crashes. Again, lesson 2008. Look no further. But nevertheless, history says over time, real estate has been pretty solid. So, don't know the future. We seem to have an economy that's got a lot of pressure on it to recede. A lot of people aging, retiring, and not going to want their houses eventually, and they want retirement type homes. And that could change the housing market. Don't know how much. If contractors ever step in and start building more affordable housing, that could finally lower some prices. But right now there's a shortage. I was just reading that nationally, they're expecting a worse shortage probably this fall than happened last fall. So going into 2020, prices could be higher than ever in the affordable housing range. That's the affordable houses, not to mention the ones that are pushing 300,000-400,000. So this is a national issue. This is not just local. So every market's different around the country potentially, but that's why you have to research your market, location, and don't jump into something you're not ready for. But if your income is established, you have a long-term income and career established, and you are ready for a house payment, your credit score is up, you have savings for at least 20% down, and avoid that PMI, that private mortgage insurance, saves you a little each month. You get a low interest rate, hopefully, with a better credit score. And you have some extra savings if something goes wrong, such as a repair is needed, or like in my case, the HVAC goes out. You have at least $5,000 on reserve for something bad happening, $500 to $5,000. If you're going to be a homeowner or a car owner, you got to think about these things. And then once those things are established, you got your cash in hand. So 20% down on the house, another $500 to $5,000 for any unexpected repairs, not to mention the stuff that is expected if you know some work needs to be done. But I'm talking about for unexpected stuff, your house emergency fund. And if you can afford the payments below your income, so there's money left over each month in your income after you pay all bills, all debts, and that includes your house payment, you need to have, I would suggest at least 5%, maybe 10% of your income is left over for whatever you choose. All right? That way you can put that extra money on the mortgage and pay off much faster if you choose. And your mortgage payment needs to be less than what you were paying in rent. Period. Because that puts you in a stronger financial position. I don't care what you think you can afford. I don't care how expensive houses are. You have to set yourself some guidelines and say, I will not overspend on a house. I'm not going to, you get your financial calculators app and you run the numbers. How much is this house? At what interest rate? Get pre-approved at a bank to find out an idea of your credit score and your interest rate. All right? So that you kind of know. And then you assume a 30-year mortgage or 15, 30 if you want the payments to be lower per month, though you'll pay more interest over time unless you pay aggressively. It's easy to turn a 30-year into a 15 by paying extra each month. It's not easy to turn a 15 into a 30. It's not allowed, right? Unless you refinance. So you're locked in to high payments if you do a 15-year mortgage. If you do a 30-year mortgage, you have lower payments, and then you can just put extra on principal as you choose and turn it into a 15-year mortgage. So I always run it that way. So then I get my Financial Calculators app, which is free from the App Store for Apple and Android, whatever. And I put in how much I'm going to borrow, at what interest rate, and for how long, 30-year mortgage, whatever. And so then I run different numbers with that. Okay, what if I buy a $100,000 house versus a $70,000 versus a $150,000 or more $1,000 house? What are my payments each month going to be? Then I do my budget, know what my bills are, and then I add that house payment theoretically in there and find out, do I have any leftover money from my paycheck? If I don't buy the house. Period. Okay? Or I say I have to buy a cheaper house. And so when I know what I can from my actual income, not my little McDonald's job, but an actual income that's fixed, not where there's going to be a turnover and I'm about to quit my job, it's temporary, seasonal, or I'm depending on bonuses that may not always be there. None of that. You need to be established with your education or your skills, and then in your career field, in a job that's fixed, or don't buy a house. Because you can't just step out of that house and quit your house payments all of a sudden. At least in a rental, if you step out, you may get evicted, move back in with mom and dad, and then start over. You can't just do that with real estate. You need to have a fixed, solid income. So you know what your income is, you know what your bills are, and you know how much leftover each month you're going to have after that theoretical house payment, right? And hopefully if you're getting a house payment that's less than rent, you will have money left over if you've already been paying rent. Now, if you've been living with mom and dad, you have a completely different scenario to worry about, is you've never had a house payment or a rent payment before, probably. And so now you're going to really that budget's going to be more critical for you, because you're going to have new bills you've never had before. You're going to have a new responsibility to pay for your own housing that you may have never done before. And so that budget's going to be critical to you. That means your income is critical, because without the income, you can't meet your obligations, which means you shouldn't oblige yourself in the first place. Don't sign a promissory note to take out debt for anything until you've done a budget. And of course, you don't have a budget until you have an income. And a lot of people don't have an income until they have an education or some sort of skill that earns them that income. Because otherwise you're just flipping burgers on minimum wage or less. And anybody making below 10 an hour is struggling in this high price market. So, and of course, then you're forced to just not buy stuff or buy used, buy cheap. And I still believe in that, even though I make more than 10 an hour. Because I don't want to overpay for brand new things that are overpriced just because they can call them new. That's foolish. I would never buy a new car, for example. I'm going to pay $30-something thousand for a car. National average, I believe, right now is about $31,000 people owe on their new cars. It's ridiculous. And about the same for student loans. Ridiculous. Go to community college. Pay nothing for your education. Get free tuition in some cases. In our state, in Tennessee, I live in Georgia, but I work in Tennessee at a college. You know, Tennessee Promise, Tennessee Reconnect. There's free options out there. A lot of the states are doing it too. And if you qualify for Pell Grant, or you get scholarships, or you get parent help, or you do some work study or other types of jobs and get your education for free. Don't come out with a bunch of student loan debt. It's not necessary. What's happening is people are going to big schools, private schools, they get accepted, and they might get a discount as a freshman, and they may even get some sort of scholarship, and then they have to go all 4 years to get their bachelor's, or even 2 years at a 2-year level, but then they're just overpaying. And the discount isn't there in their sophomore year, or their scholarship runs out before the second. It's not a 4-year scholarship usually, and it's not a 4-year discount either. And then they'll come out with a way overpriced education. So before you go to any college, compare the prices. Before you buy any car, any house, any purchase like furniture or shopping, or take any trip, or commit to a hotel, any of this kind of expensive stuff, you check the prices first. You learn how to cut your costs. So, just saying. Or we don't do it, right? I am not at all ashamed of staying with my parents, and I did in my 20s, for a little while longer, working a job. Don't stay with your parents and then not work. Parents, tell your kids they got to have an income. So they got to be working and saving, right? Because it's so important, because that's how you get out on your feet, on your own 2 feet. But I lived with my parents for a while, and I worked. I was only making $9 an hour as a CNA. Didn't have to have a big education for that. Just had to have my CNA certification, which I passed through the state of Tennessee at the time. Sometimes you can get that training for free nowadays. In my day, I had to pay for it. So I worked a mountain stone job where I carried the rocks for this guy, and I mixed the concrete. And I made just pennies on the dollar, it seemed. But I saved enough money to get my CNA, And then my CNA allowed me to get $9 an hour, and I saved my $9 an hour until I had $10,000 in savings. And I bought my first house. It's kind of a dumb thing to do, but I bought my first house cash only, $8,100 in the inner city of Chattanooga. $8,100. It was a foreclosure, and it was in decent condition, but it did not have heating and air. It was not a safe place to live. Gunshots almost every night. One or two of my neighbors were killed by gunfire in the drug culture that was happening there, and they told me that. They came to my front porch and literally wept on my shoulder, and I cried with them. And the drug culture and the gang culture was pretty rough. I never got targeted. I always pretty much felt safe. I did go through some robberies, but I knew they weren't targeting me. They were just taking my stuff. They took about $1,000 worth of surround sound and movies and whatever they could get as a quick pawn item. My whole Xbox 360 that I had bought brand new at the time like an idiot, and lost every bit of that within just a few weeks of owning it. Had it in a duffel bag. All they had to do was take the duffel bag and walk out the door with it. And they did. So I went through some trials, but you know what? I loved my neighbors, and I just tried to live Jesus, and I realized they're in pain. It was a federally recognized food desert where I was living, so there was not a lot of grocery access. I saw kids eat roach pizza, changed my life. Roaches crawling on the pizza, and they ate it because they were so hungry. And I realized, okay, I gotta, have a heart for these people. I can't be so stingy. I ended up opening the doors to my neighbors and letting them in. Parents, kids, have my food. Come on in. I never got robbed again until I was moving out, and they thought I was leaving anyway. But I went for about 5-6 years and no more robberies after about 3. I'm just saying, 2 in the house, 1 in the car. Apparently I left my car unlocked. Maybe that was a good thing because they might have smashed a window. I don't know. But I couldn't find anything missing, but I had over $1,000 stuff missing out of my house. But you know what? I didn't really need all that crap. It's not right to steal, but the Lord had to do some work in my heart. I didn't need to be playing video games all the time anyway. I started saving money aggressively while I lived in that little inner city house, and I saved, I think, pushing $30,000 because I got my education, got my bachelor's, I got a full-time job and not just that little part-time CNA job, and I saved up to, I think, $27,000 to $30,000. That was huge for me. I'd look at it every month and just like blown away at triple digits. But then I thought, well, if I try to buy an expensive house, I need $30,000-$40,000 down payment plus a bunch of rent. Even if I only need $10,000, but then it needs fixing up because I'm not buying the brand new houses. I can't afford that for sure. But even these fixer uppers, they need a bunch of work, and I don't have that much cash, and I felt trapped. But I kept saving. Then I got married, right? And eventually sold my old little house, and we moved to my wife's little house. And then I finally said, you know what? Maybe I do really need a mortgage. At least I have enough for a down payment and renovation. I kept saving, and I think I want to say I was pushing about 35,000. I think I was at about 35,000. So I put 15,000 down on this house, put another 15,000 in closing costs and all, another 15 in renovation. That's a total of 30. And I left myself $5,000 in an emergency fund, basically. Long story short. Then I sold my old house for 30 and got my 30 back. So I was back to where I was. Then I decided to put most of that on this mortgage and pay it down much faster. So a $480 a month house payment, and now over $200 of that dollars is going to principal, not to interest. So I flipped my mortgage payment by paying it down aggressively to where more is going to principal than interest. And of course, taxes and insurance are in that too. And just doing an extra $1,000 a month, like I say, on principal. So really worked hard, be aggressive there. And then, long story short, we want to pay off next year, Lord willing. And by even being perhaps more aggressive, we know the goal. We know it's achievable. A goal has to be achievable with the incentive of becoming debt-free, freeing up some income for providing more for not only our family, but for the ministry, things that we have in our heart to do, Lord willing, long term. And we're trying to get there. And that's what motivates me every day, to be smart with my money. I could blow money every day if I wanted to do some shopping online or in the store or wherever. Not a lot of out to eats, not a lot of movies, not a lot of trips and hotels. We have quality time watching Netflix or whatever and saving money. And we do take some fun trips here and there, but we don't do a lot of hotel stuff. We try to stay close enough. We cut our trip cost in half by avoiding the whole hotel thing. Doing a one-day trip. Same day, leave in the morning, get a little breakfast, come back. Even with out to eat, we do mostly fast food and some cheap stuff. We can still save half the money it would cost. That includes gas, as long as we don't overshop. So, and our shopping is mostly, we look at it as window shopping. We're just looking and oogling. And if you really want to do something when you're shopping and not spend money, just take a picture of it. As long as you're in a store that doesn't care. We like a lot of antique stores. Just take a picture. That's good enough. And put it in your catalog of things that you think are cool. But you don't have to actually buy it. You're not going to actually use it. You put it up in your house and then you throw it away. Or in a attic or something. So just take a picture. Save a ton of money. All right, a few tips. But get some goals. Get some incentives. Get excited about empowering your family, your future. Some say, pay yourself first or pay your future self and get in a strong place to be a ministry to others, not just yourself. And watch God do really big things with your finances. All right? Have a good one.